All right, get rolling here with this. Apologize for the science cold going on here, but we'll start talking about the Great Depression here. When we really start talking about the Great Depression, throughout the entire Great Depression, this economic crisis ends up gripping the United States as a whole. People lose their farms, people lose their homes, people lose their jobs, people lose their everyday way of life. And because of the way President Herbert Hoover responds to this depression, it really ends up costing him a lot of supporters and eventually will cost him an election. Going over our bell ringer for the day. What president had shanty towns named after him? That was, you got it on your board. Yeah, Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover, because of his poor response to the Great Depression, ends up really having, open up the window here a little bit, it's a little hard. Light roller here. There you go. Cost him a lot of voters. Oh, turn on. Did I? There we go. All right. This chapter 14, has 3 different sections. We'll talk about the nation's economy. We'll talk about hardship, suffering during the Depression. We'll talk about Hoover's struggles during the Depression as we move along. I want to fix something here real quick. Give me just a second. I want to make sure that this video camera does what I want it to do. There we go. All right. So as the 1920s advance, prosperity really begins to decline, and these hopes and dreams of millions of Americans will really crush this kind of crushing blow. You have a lot of industries that end up being in trouble because of superficial prosperity. The 20s was shrouded in weakness that really signaled the onset of the Depression. Industries like railroads, textiles, steel, they really weren't making much profit, if any at all. Railroads were starting to see this decline because they were starting to face competition from trucks, automobiles, buses, other types of transportation they really didn't have to worry about prior to this time. Mining and lumber, they were also really not that high in demand anymore. During World War I, remember that there was a high demand to start fueling this war. We had to build these great technological things. We had to build boats. We had to build ships. But now we really don't have to worry about doing that as much anymore. So you really start to see that go down in decline as well. Coal mining. The coal mines were hit just as hard during this time as well. Competition, you start to see competition from a lot of new forms of energy. You really start to see this from hydroelectric power. Hydroelectric power is just, it's a dam. Raise your hand, you know where like Tiger's Dam is in Grafton. Okay. A lot of your hydroelectric energy comes from water hydro generating electric. And they do this from dams and other areas. And that's really where you start to see the development of the hydroelectric power. You really start to see some more of this World War II time. After that, when we start talking about some of the New Deal programs that are out there, we really start to see it there. You'll see it's from fuel, petroleum, natural gases. They start to really become into effect and we can start hurting these people. That's when you start to see a lot of this fossil fuel starting to develop. And you also see, automobiles, construction, consumer goods, they all begin to decline toward this time. Remember during during World War I, we had this big, huge economic development because we were really trying to support both home and abroad. We had a lot of things we had to do. Once people came back from the war, we were developing automobiles. We talked about that in the prosperity of the 20s. Excuse me for a second. Yeah, really started talking about that when we talked about the prosperity of the 20s. Last chapter, which we just had a test on in this class. Just had a test on. Because a lot of people have already bought these automobiles. We're now starting to see that it's the thing I talk about all the time. Supply and demand. Supply and demand. Supply. And the best way to exemplify this supply and demand is we'll do it here on a chart. That's kind of hard to do it on the chart. But let's say you have more supply. The more supply you have, the more demand there is for it. The less supply. Because people want that item. So like when you talk about, not this past generation of the iPhone, we talk about the last iPhone, the iPhone X, the iPhone 10. They originally didn't put out a whole lot of those models of that iPhone. They just didn't have a lot of it out there. I really started to see people wanting this iPhone, just had to have it. But because there wasn't a lot of supply, that demand skyrocketed, took off like crazy. I'm gonna turn my light on here too a little bit. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to get this here propped up so that way for the class we're recording. Oh yeah, that's better. Now you're not gonna look right here. And that's kind of that supply and demand in a nutshell. That's supply and demand right there. Sorry guys. There we go. Just because I keep walking back and forth in this front section, and then I'm sitting up here all back in the second row, a couple rows. But you also start to see housing start to decline. Because when they come back from the war, people were trying to build these new houses, expand our infrastructure, expand our economy. But once we start to get to a certain point, you really start to see those number of houses dip down. And because of these new homes, fewer and fewer are being built, jobs in these relating industries start to decline as well. Construction jobs, furniture manufacturing, lumber, all of these fields start to dwindle. Now, it might throw you off a little bit when I talk about furniture manufacturing. But you got to think about it. All of these houses have some sort of furniture. Does anyone here live in a house that doesn't have furniture? No. It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't have furniture. You would not have furniture in your house. You like to have a place to sit. You have to have a bed. Some of your dads have a recliner. I know I have one. I just bought my house. So I mean, it's little things like that when you don't think about the economy getting impacted, but it's things that over time they start to decline. I mean, stop. I know you're a little winded when you guys are taking notes, but one of the biggest industries that hurt the most is farming and agriculture. During World War I, prices rise and international demand for crops such as wheat and corn, they soar because we got to feed the troops both home and abroad. We got to feed people here in the United States, plus we got to feed all those men that are going overseas. Speaking of going overseas, I know we're kind of going backwards into World War I. Yesterday's Veterans Day. Very important day. I hope everyone took a moment. If you have a family member, Hope you called them up. Said, so-and-so, and I really appreciate the service that you provided for our country. You know, that's important. It shouldn't be just Veterans Day. It should be every single day we should be thanking our veterans. But especially Veterans Day. Take them out to dinner. Go get them a meal. Or, you know, if you went somewhere that gives veterans a free meal, good as well. Just be there for your veteran. Give them a free meal. Say thank you. Our country's much better because of you people out there. And because...
Knock, knock. What?
Hold on, I'll be right back, guys. All right. Like I said, as you know, I'm trying to remember where I was at here. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I'm really sorry. Because of this big, huge demand, you see all of these farmers planting more and more crops because they have to meet this demand somehow. They have to plant more. They're also taking out loans to pay for the crops they're building, they're growing. They have to take out loans for the land that they're cultivating, and they really just can't do that. They also take loans out for their equipment. You see that even still today. People go to like Parks Equipment over in Brewston. They take out loans for their Kubota tractor, their John Deere, their International Harvester. Yeah, I'm sorry. I see with your shirt on. International Harvester. But once this demand falls after World War I, you see this the demand fall. Crop prices drop nearly 40%. They drop nearly 40%. And what they tried to do to get these crop prices back up, they tried to boost their production. They thought, oh, well, maybe if we sell more, or if we create more product, that'll drive that price back up. But it did the opposite. Because they had so much food, they had so much crops, that price plummeted even further because they couldn't sell it at such a high price. So it fell even further. And between 1919 and 1921, the annual farm income declined from around $10 billion to around $4 billion. Take a $6 billion decline in the agriculture industry. That's a huge hit to an industry. That is huge, 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 huge. And all these farmers that were in debt, they were really having a hard time paying off of their debts. Most of the farmers end up foreclosing on their farms because the banks foreclosed their properties and they seized it as a form of payment. They couldn't make their payments. I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we live in you guys know where we live. And you see it all the time. People can't make the payments for certain things. The bank comes and says, hey, you know what, you're not making your good time payments on this, it's ours. It happens. And that's really kind of what happens to these farmers during this time period. That because farmers can't make and this is where it gets into a catch-22. It's like we just talked about the rise of consumerism. And when the banks start to fail, we talked about that a little bit. People were taking all of these things out on credit because they thought, oh, it's okay, I can pay for it down the road. It's not going to have a big deal. It's not going to be that big of a deal if they pay it back eventually. Well, these farmers had that same thought process, that same ideal. But what happens is when they default on their payments, these banks are taking the property, but they're not getting any money value back. So these rural banks start to fall by the wayside and fail because they aren't generating any revenue, because these farmers don't have any money. They're not generating any money at all. So what you start to see is Congress trying to help these farmers any way that they can. And one of the first things they do is they try to pass the McNary-Hagen bill. Basically, this calls for price supports. Price supports are nothing more than when the government buys a surplus and sells it on the world market. So if I had, let's say there's 5 of you in here right now, but I have 12 somethings. I have 12 of these. I have 12 squares. These little blue squares here, they're little eraser squares. I have 12 of them. 12. I give everyone here their 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everyone gets their 1. The government would then come in and go, hey, you know what? We're going to buy these extra little blue squares here. Don't know what we really need them for. We're going to sell them on the world market. Maybe somebody else needs some blue squares to help with their cleaning or whatever. So that's what they do. They try to sell. Those are called price supports. But the problem is, and I'm going to explain to you the crops they kind of sell this. They try to generate these price supports on. They do it on wheat, corn, cotton, and tobacco. Not only does President Calvin Coolidge, who's the president right now, not only does he veto this bill once, he vetoes it twice. Basically because he says farmers don't make any money and there's nothing that can be done about it. That's what Calvin Coolidge thought. Farmers don't make any money and there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot change my mind. He's like that guy who has that, it's a meme and you always see it all the time. I want to show it to you. That's the best way to show it to you. I'm going to find you one that's not. Okay, like here's one right here. If it loads up. Here's a funny one. This guy's sitting out there, it's probably, they do this WVU, in the free speech circle where you go out there, you've got somebody out there in their little booth trying to get petitions, somebody to sign it for their cause. You just sign up for stupid government, the Mountaineer Maniacs, whatever. This guy here, I don't even think this is a real sign, honestly. I mean, this part isn't, but I don't know if the change my mind thing isn't. But he's just sitting there, it says, penguins are just panda chickens. Change my mind. So that's what Calvin Coolidge kind of had right here. If I could create this meme, I would. Where I would place this guy's head to Calvin Coolidge and say, farmers don't make any money. Change my mind. That's pretty much how Calvin Coolidge felt. Farmers don't make money. There's nothing you can do about it. Try to change my mind. Oh, forgot one thing, my bad. This is a really short one, so you guys can grab those notes on that one. And as farmers' incomes fall, they have less money to buy goods and services. And overall, Americans are starting to buy less and less, which means we have rising prices, stagnant wages, and we're still overbuying on credit. So one thing I can tell you guys, it's the one thing I've learned in my 26 years, is that if you don't have the money to pay for it, do not buy it. Do not buy it. Because when I say these rising prices, let's say your gallon of milk. Gallon of milk. That's what I'm saying. A gallon of milk cost you, at this time, let's say it cost you 73 cents. Probably in 1920s it didn't cost you 73 cents. I'm just elaborating. So as the Depression begins, let's say we have the surplus of milk and the stores can't sell it. So they're trying to have to charge more money because it's starting to go bad. I mean, they're trying to get it off the shelf. As these rising prices go up, let's say that milk now costs you $1.25 a gallon. Sorry, my